All right, we are hot.
Hot and bothered.
That's right.
Something like that.
Episode 54 at Harshlang Pod.
Wait, wasn't the last one 54?
No. I don't know, maybe. Oh, yeah, we're on 55. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
My bad. Professional podcast. What would I do without you, Marvin?
Well,
Episode 55 at Harshlang Pod on Twitter.
Yes,
and
sir.
Available anywhere you like to get your podcasts.
Yep.
Today is Make Marvin Watch Day. Biggest day of the month for us. We're talking about the movie Little Children a little bit later. And I also wanted to talk about the first episode of Secret Invasion. I know you watched it. And, of course, the hot goss from this week. So, yeah. So, big show today. Big show. Always big show. I got to say, Marvin, I didn't know what to think about non-glasses Marvin at first, but I'm kind of into it.
Nice.
You got very beautiful eyes. Nah,
Thank you.
I think it just took me a little bit to get used to it, you know? Because you see somebody the same way. It's like kind of probably how you guys felt when I just had the stash going, right? And no beard.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about going back to the stash, but I'm not sure. We'll see.
You should. I liked it.
I kind of liked it too, but we will see.
What the hell are we supposed to use, man? Harsh language?
Anyway, how's your week?
I didn't do much. I just been playing Diablo.
Yeah, how's that?
Just playing Diablo. Yeah, it's good. It's fun.
So you're liking it?
Yeah.
All right, that's good.
Been grinding.
I should say we are clearly minus Dusty today. He had to deal with a personal matter, so he will be missed.
That's right.
But we are in good hands. He. Let me tell you, he's a grinder, baby. He sent me the notes for his news that he procured for the week. So
he didn't like the news without him. So
yeah, no, that was a disaster. Actually, you didn't. He said it was good. You're the one who gave me shit.
He said it was good. I knew it wasn't good.
I thought it was fine. Nice. What was wrong with it? There's nothing wrong with it.
It was bad. We were just saying, I think this happened. I heard something about this.
It was a little on the fly because that time he had like fallen asleep. So it was like we were last minute go time without him. But
right.
So just playing Diablo, huh?
Yeah, I haven't been watching anything, reading anything.
That's fair. I haven't been watching much. I've only been just watching Mr. Mercedes.
Oh yeah.
I'm up to season 3. It's a very good show. I really enjoy it. But I'm watching it casually. Normally I'll just like kind of binge shit, but I don't know. I've been doing some other stuff on the side, so.
Does that mean you think it sucks? It's not that good then?
No, I really like it. I know it's like over and there's no rush really, so.
Yeah.
There's also really nothing else to watch that's like pressing. Tomorrow is the season finale of Superman and Lois, so like I'm caught up with that. And now Secret Invasion, has been going. So that's just going to be week to week. I'm really in no rush to like just eliminate something out of my life with nothing else. And it's also during the week, sometimes I get in the mood to watch like a movie. So some nights I'll just like throw on a movie.
Yeah.
Something I could, a lot of stuff. I watch a lot of shit that I've seen a lot of times. You know what I mean? You got to go back to those comfort films. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I do that with shows.
I do that too.
I do that with shows every now and then. I have a friend, she's like obsessed with Frasier, and she doesn't really like TV or like she watches movies, but like she mostly just like watches Frasier like over and over and over again.
It's in the background.
Yeah, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
But I have been thinking of I've been mulling the idea of doing a rewatch of X-Files because it's been quite some time since I've last watched it in its entirety.
Ooh. That's a commitment.
Yeah, like 9 season commitment, 10 maybe. I think it's 9.
Oof. Yeah. I mean, you get through shows quick though, so.
And 2 films that I have to watch. That would be like part of the run too. So.
Yeah.
You should watch X-Files, Marvin.
Maybe so. I actually I finished the first season of Sunny.
Oh yeah.
Funnily enough, yeah.
What'd you think?
That was pretty cool. The last episode had the guy from Westworld in it. It was pretty surprising. It was funny.
Which guy?
The guy that played the young man in black, William.
Oh yeah, he's a reoccurring character. He plays one of the brothers.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he's funny.
Yeah.
He's actually a really funny
hilarious.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah,
I forget
those
the brothers'
brothers are
names.
so weird.
Yeah.
I don't know, but they are so weird.
Wait till you meet their sister.
Oh God, they're all just showering together.
Yeah.
What else did I watch? I watched like 2
McPoyles.
episodes of that. Oh, okay.
The McPoyle brothers. Yeah, they're fucking hilarious.
It was so funny that episode. I don't know all their names that well yet.
Dennis,
think
Mac, and
Mac-
Charlie.
Mac is the buff guy.
Yeah.
Mac was like, it was the molestation episode. So Mac was like trying to get he was trying to hook up with the old gym teacher that allegedly molested them as they were kids. He was trying to get with them as an adult.
That
shit was pretty funny.
There's a lot of reoccurring characters in the show. It's one of those shows. I think I talked about this, or they talked about it too on their podcast. Like, you know, if somebody's not familiar with the show, what's an episode that you would like start somebody out with? And it's that type of show. You don't really have to watch it. There is continuity, but not real continuity. Where like, like you could just jump into really any episode, but knowing the continuity about like the McPoyles and stuff, like all that stuff being reoccurring it really elevates it to make it more funny.
Yeah.
So
I'll watch some more, I think.
The new season has started. I mentioned it. Dusty and I mentioned it. And last week's episode, they brought back another reoccurring character, which is Charlie's uncle. I don't know if you've met him yet in season 1. I can't remember when they first introduced him, but
I don't think I've met an uncle yet. I don't think so.
They make pretty strong allusions to the fact that like he molested Charlie as a kid.
Oh my God, Charlie's getting molested by everyone.
But now that Charlie's older, he like knows his uncle was a creep, but his uncle's like still trying to like get with him.
Oh my God.
So it's every time he shows up, it's like really fucking funny. And he'll be like, I remember there's one specific episode where he's like, "Hey Charlie, why don't we have a sleepover like we used to? It'll be fun." He's like, "No, uncle, whatever. I'm not having a sleepover with you." Yeah. I think I love that fucking show. Well, I'm glad you're liking it.
Yeah. I also watched 2 more episodes of that Godfather of Harlem show.
Oh yeah, how's that?
It's just kind of something to watch. I just keep kind of coming back to it, but I don't really know if I want to commit that much.
Not great?
It's all right. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I feel you. Like I said, there's so many fucking streaming services all doing their own original content. Like you got to be real fucking picky and choosy. I can't be watching all this fucking shit and committing to like multiple seasons of a thing.
For sure. I think it has like 3 seasons too, so I got to think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, let's jump into something we both watched this week. The first episode of Secret Invasion. What'd you think of that, Marvin?
Yes, sir. My boy.
Your boy.
I was
Everyone's
about to say
boy.
the slur he said, but I was thinking maybe I shouldn't say it.
What did he say again? Oh, well, you can technically say it because it's a double entendre, right? Because he's a spy. It's what they call spies back then. Or back in the day.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's kind of what the joke was, is that it worked on like 2 levels.
That makes it better. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the S word.
The S word.
It was
hard K.
I laughed. I thought about you because he was like, I could say it, but you can't.
You can't. Yeah,
you can't say that shit. Yeah, so episode 1 of Secret Invasion dropped. We were hyped for the show, I think. You and I.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dusty was too.
Oh, yeah. From
the trailer that they had released a couple months back, it really seemed like this was going to be... I think that they're going back to something that I think a lot of MCU fans have been missing, right?
What's that?
Well, you know, we're getting a lot of like multiverse stuff and like magic shit with Doctor Strange and
back to the roots,
all this stuff. But
kind of,
yeah, but going back to the Earth-based like spy thriller shit, which was established in Captain America: The Winter Soldier,
right?
Which I think is largely considered the best Marvel movie at the end of the day. Like, again, anytime we talk about the best, you have to make you have to make the distinction that Endgame and Infinity War are kind of like off in their own category. Because they're the culmination of all this shit. Those movies don't work without the decades long thing that came before it. So I kind of just throw them aside. And doing that, I mean, it's really between Guardians 1 and Winter Soldier for me as far as the best one. And I think Winter Soldier's probably tops it a little bit because it's like just a very like local spy thriller. Have you seen Winter Soldier?
Yeah. Yeah.
That movie is so good. Because
I'm not the biggest fan of Captain America, so that gives me a little
podcast is canceled.
Bias to the other side.
Shit. Fuck this. I'm done. I'm out of here. How do you not like Captain America? I don't understand.
Overrated.
Oh my God. Anyhow, I don't even want to get into this with you. But anyway, the movie's great because at the end of the day, it's a lot like what Dark Knight was, right? Dark Knight is like a good like caper movie, like a cops and robbers type of movie, just with Batman and the Joker in it, right? It's kind of like Heat in that way, which I've brought up before. Similarly, Civil War is just
Heat,
like
that's the one I never saw, but I remember the reference.
We'll have to throw that on and make Marvin watch. Maybe I can convince Dusty to pick that next month. I'll try to influence him a little bit in his choice.
Nah, I'm sure there's a Western on the backlog that's
on the horizon.
In front of that.
All right, boys, we're watching a fucking Brazilian Western.
Yep.
But yeah, so episode 1 was titled Resurrection. And the title basically speaks for itself. Our boy Nick Fury is back in business, baby.
Back on Earth, even.
Yeah, I don't know how caught up you are with like where things have been, but basically, this whole storyline sort of starts with Captain Marvel, which takes place in the 90s, and that was before Nick Fury was the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he meets Carol Danvers and learns that there are alien races out there, one of which is the Skrulls, which are these shape-shifting creatures, and they are at war with the Kree, and the Kree is the race of people that Ronan, the villain in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, the blue guy, he's like their general, or he's like the Kree general, and basically he's just a genocidal maniac, and he's going around trying to kill the Skrulls, and the Skrulls need a home. So Carol Danvers and Fury, by the end of that film, make them a promise that, like, hey, we'll let you hang out here on Earth, and we'll find you a new place.
Right.
Jump forward to Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier is about basically the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been completely infiltrated by Hydra, and a lot of the government has, for that matter. And basically S.H.I.E.L.D. falls, and Nick Fury kind of like goes off on his own, does his own thing. Goes into hiding, I guess you could say. And you don't really catch up to him that much anymore after that until really like Endgame, when you see him at Tony's funeral. You don't really know like what he's been up to, and it's not until Spider-Man. There's like a stinger, I forget in which movie, where they show him up in the Sword facility, which is the space station.
Right.
And essentially after what happens with Thanos and stuff, Fury's like, all right, we got to focus on like protecting Earth from like aliens and shit. So that's what he's been up to. And then he gets blipped, obviously. He's a victim, him and Maria Hill. And last time we saw him, he was in Spider-Man Far From Home, which you didn't see. He's helping Spider-Man throughout the whole movie, him and Maria Hill. And,
okay.
And at the end of the movie, you find out that it was actually Talos and his wife in the form of Fury and Maria Hill. And they're basically like doing his job on Earth for him while he's up in Saber. And that's really been it. So this is the first time we're seeing this guy back on Earth. He makes a grand entrance, very similar to E.T., some E.T. stuff, and like imagery and Close Encounters.
Yeah, it really was.
But he's back on Earth.
What was up with his name in the intro?
What do you mean?
It says his name is not Samuel Jackson. It's like Samuel fucking Babatunde or some shit. I don't know. It's like weird.
Wait, what? Are you sure it was him or somebody else?
Dude, I don't know. I don't know, actually.
Babatunde. I don't know.
I wish I had a screenshot.
I don't know what the fuck you're talking. Oh, yeah, dude. No, it's a different character. It's the guy playing Beto. His name is Samuel Adewunme.
Oh, okay.
You were close.
That's it.
That was close, Marvin. Good for you. I can see the confusion.
Thought it was Yeah, I don't know what the fuck was going on there.
You got
I
multiple
don't remember
Samuels.
seeing Samuel L. Jackson's name, so that's why I was like, what is happening? I don't know what's going on.
That's funny. I actually wasn't paying attention to the names. I was paying attention to the imagery in the title sequence because there's actually a bit of a controversy going on because of it.
It was made by AI or something, right?
Yeah, it came out that
so that was real. I thought that was just Twitter trolling.
I think it's real because it's been reported by a couple of, I guess, what I would consider reputable accounts. So
yeah, that's also why I thought the name was wrong. Like
the AI just fucked it up. Well, I mean, listen, people are flipping out because there's these people like, oh, AI is fucking taking our jobs, blah, 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 blah. It's like, listen, I'm a graphic designer and I do motion graphics, and like AI is not taking our jobs, bro. Like there's the human element that is still involved. And there's been, I had this conversation recently with another friend of mine, a graphic designer friend of mine, who we were talking, and it's like, there's this argument that, because there's a lot of people on Twitter that are saying they are AI artists, and people seem to take issue with that terminology, meaning like you can't be an artist unless you're physically like making the shit. And it's like,
nah, that's the same shit as like when people started making music or producing music 100% from like a computer.
Right.
Like you don't have to have a full band playing every note and all this.
I mean, a large part of the art is the creativity factor of it. And there are some people who are very creative that just don't have the technical skills or know how to, put those creations to paper or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I don't really think there's anything wrong with it. And I don't think my job is in jeopardy. No. And I actually thought it was a cool thing to do because the nature of this show is that you don't know who's what. Like,
yeah, that's what I was. At first, I was telling you, it was like, oh, this is gonna be like a whodunit, but I was like, nah, this is more like The Thing. Like, this is definitely like
it's a spy thriller mixed with like The Thing, yeah. And I thought that getting AI to make it is actually really interesting because AI can only do so much, and a lot of times, because you made a couple of images with AI, I've made some images with AI. And it's always like, it's actually pretty off-putting. It's like that, what's that term that people use, for like robots looking like humans? It's called something. Uncanny Valley. And AI images always have like elements of realism, but then there's always like little things that are like off about it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I actually find that really cool. There's an account that I follow on Twitter called This Person's Not Real, and it's AI images. And when you look at the images closely, at first glance, they just look like real people. But when you actually really like look and analyze the picture, there's always
like
some stuff
glitch.
That's
like a Picasso fucking
yes
type glitch.
Yep, there's stuff that's off, and it's really weird.
Yeah.
And that's how this intro is. It's like everything's blurred, and like they're vague images of things that we know from real life, like London and all this stuff. I actually thought it looked really cool, and I thought it serves the plot of the show really well. So I feel like people just are always going to find something to complain about. That's obviously no secret. Sure. But
it's funny, AI, the art thing. Like, I was reading some article about how there's so much AI art now that when you generate art, it's starting to pull from other AI art. So it's like compounding, making bad mistakes to the art. You know what I mean? Because it's already bad when they make a mistake. So yeah, it's pretty funny. I never thought about that before.
But
it just keeps pulling from it. Go ahead.
Well, no, that's interesting. Well, that's how AI learns. It just learns by how much it's used and like all the different prompts that it gets over and over and over again. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But yeah, so this episode establishes Fury's got to come back to Earth because there's some fucking stuff that's going on. Basically,
terrorist shit. Well, not real terrorist shit. Go ahead.
No, it is terrorist shit, but there's a group of young and disgruntled Skrulls that are basically saying like, yo, you guys promised to give us a home. We've been stuck here for decades.
The cause.
Nobody's doing anything. We're just going to make this bitch our home. Fuck you guys.
Fuck it.
And they're using their shape-shifting abilities to basically establish themselves in all levels of government and power structures and stuff all over the world. And they have a plot to basically, they're basically doing like a chain of terrorist attacks to try to destabilize the governments of the world so they could then insert themselves into that. And I didn't
understand like why they're wanting to completely take over. They don't want to try to coexist?
No, because they feel like they can't be themselves, right? Because remember their password is whatever. Like, what was the password when he went to the facility? That guy, he's like, in my skin or something. He said something along those lines. So, like, you know, they feel like they can't be themselves here, rightfully so. I mean, humans on Earth, every interaction that they've had with aliens in this universe has been fucking a disaster. There was the Battle of New York in Avengers, and fucking Thanos came to town and fucking wiped out half the fucking life in the universe. So it's like, you can't blame him, right?
Prejudice against aliens.
Yeah. And because you can't trust nobody, Fury forms a small team of his closest confidants, which is Maria Hill, longtime, my girl, Maria Hill, played by Colby Smulders, longtime right-hand woman of Nick Fury, and Talos, who he's had a relationship with clearly all these years. We learned that Talos' wife has been killed at the hands of the terrorist leader, who is Gravik, played by Kingsley Ben Adir. And we learned that Emilia Clarke's character, Gaia, who is a older version of Talos's, she's the daughter of Talos, older than we last saw her in Captain Marvel. She's working for Gravik, and you know, she's maybe kind of like playing both sides of the fence. We learned that we learned that Gravik may or may not have killed Talos' wife and her mom. So there's a lot of like questions still lingering. Obviously, it was one episode. But there was a big reveal right in the beginning of the episode. Martin Freeman, who plays Agent Everett Ross, who we've seen him in Black Panther. We've seen him in what else did we see him in? I think he was in Civil War, but I can't remember. I think he was in Civil War because he was helping capture Winter Soldier in Civil War. So, but he's been around. He's Agent Everett Ross, but it was revealed that he's one of the Skrull that's part of this fucking terrorist group. Now, they were not clear on how long he's been a Skrull, and that's the cool part about this storyline, right? Is in the comic books, and there's something I want to talk about later in the news that connects to this, but in the comic books, they seem to be doing a very different version of it from the comic books. But in the comics, every motherfucker was a Skrull. Fucking Tony Stark was a Skrull, fucking everybody. And it ultimately leads into the Secret Wars, which is, as you know, the movie that may or may not be coming out now. We'll see what happens with that.
Right.
But it's one of like the sparks that leads to that. But in the comic books, like, you don't know who to fucking trust, and here's the same thing. And now they're showing us like, hey, this guy you knew, he was a fucking Skrull this whole time. So it's like, how long was he a Skrull? What was his objectives if he was a Skrull this whole time? So there's going to be a lot of that stuff, and I already see the speculation going on online. I'm already speculating myself. And
get deep.
But I thought it was a great episode.
For sure.
It really establishes what the show is going to be, like the tone of the show, and I'm fucking here for it, baby, because this is when, like, I think Marvel has been at its best when it was these smaller, like, Earth-based stories, for the most part. Yeah, love Thor, love the Guardians, love all this stuff, but, like, there's just something about these spy thrillers, man. They're great. Like,
major death in the first episode too. That they really set the tone. They let you know they ain't
major death. Spoiler alert! If you haven't watched it yet, close your ears now. Maria Hill fucking dies at the end. She gets shot in the fucking stomach by Gravik, who had taken the shape of Nick Fury, and it's actually heartbreaking because her last breath, she thinks it was Fury.
She still, that was sad.
And they foreshadowed it a little bit, and I'm upset that I didn't think it was going to happen. I didn't catch it at all, because that scene earlier in the episode where they're playing chess, and she's saying to him, like, you know, maybe you're not up to the task anymore, man. Like, you're old. He's limping in this episode. He's fucking got his eye patch off and all this shit.
Right.
He's clearly questioning, like, his place in the world post-Avengers and Blip and all that shit. I think he's lost faith maybe in the system. With that, we know. I think he's lost faith in maybe the heroes, because he saw, obviously they won ultimately in Endgame, but at what cost, right? 5 years went by and people like lost stuff. So I think he's got a lot of legitimate questions in his head, but she foreshadows this and she's like, yo, you might not be up to the task. And if you're not, like, people could get hurt. And lo and behold, she gets hurt. But I think this is a bit of a red herring because the Nick Fury that I know, he's always fucking 10 steps ahead of everybody. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
This fucking man wore an eye patch his whole life, specifically to hide the fact that he used his fucking bum eye as a failsafe in the event that S.H.I.E.L.D. was ever infiltrated by bad parties. And that's what happened at the end of fucking Winter Soldier. I don't know if you remember, but, you know, Hydra's fucking taking over the whole shit, and then you think everything's lost, and he's like, I got a failsafe, motherfucker. I still got control. So this guy, like, he's not some fucking feeble old man who doesn't know what's going on. Like, I think he's just putting on a show. I think he wants people to think he's weaker than he actually is to expose motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? I
hope so. Yeah. I don't want to see him.
Yeah.
Weak for sure.
But yeah, I mean, this episode was great. Again, really sets the tone for, I think, where the show's going to go. I'm excited to watch the rest of it. And, like, who doesn't fucking love Samuel L. Jackson? He's like the GOAT, really.
Yeah.
You know?
It really is.
And Fury has always been a great character, but we've never really seen him in a leading role like this. He's always just kind of been behind the scenes, pulling the strings, getting the team together, you know? So it's really cool. We're going to get to see, like, a nice deep dive into Fury and, like, who he is and what he's up to and what he's all about. So I'm excited. I'm on board for it. I'm hyped for the remaining episodes.
Me too. What's the air date again? Wednesdays?
I think Wednesdays, yeah.
Okay.
Just a little speculation. I think Don Cheadle's probably going to end up, I think Rhodey's going to end up being a Skrull.
Yeah.
Because I think he's the Secretary of State right now, if I had to guess, because that was Thunderbolt Ross's job. No, Secretary of Defense, I'm sorry. But he could also just be like a what's the word? Consultant, you know, for the government. But we'll see. A lot of cool stuff. There could be a lot of big reveals. I don't actually think, though, that they're going to do some sort of crazy shit where it's like, oh, yeah, Tony Stark was a Skrull the whole time. I don't think they're going to do anything to, like, erase, like, what has happened.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And I also think that'd be lame if they did that.
Yeah, it would.
In this world where, like, Tony's dead.
Could they do something like where Fury is a Skrull all along?
That, I speculated that with Ed. Shout out to Ed.
Shout out.
And he was like, oh, that'd be interesting. But I don't know. I feel like Talos could suss out one of his own. So, like,
yeah,
I saw a theory online that Talos is actually the one pulling the strings for the terrorists, which would be an interesting twist because this whole time we've been thinking he was a good guy on Fury's side. So that would be a nice gut punch, you know, if they did something like that.
Right.
But yeah, no, it was cool. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, really good.
We'll see where that goes. But yeah, other than that, I haven't really watched too much. But there has been some news talking about it. I mentioned I had there is a piece of news that relates to this, so we might as well just jump right into the news. Dusty categorized the news by subject matter, so we'll start with Disney here, and we'll start with this. So it's been reported and it's been going around, and some people are using it as I guess a way to criticize the show, which, you know, seems fucking stupid to me. But the director of Secret Invasion, Ali Salim, he was told not to read the comics going into this.
Oh, I've heard of such things.
Yeah, so people are like, oh, that's fucking nuts. Like, how you gonna not have him read the comics? Well, it's obvious. Like, this is a very different story than what was in the comics, so there's no point to read them. Why come into some shit with, like, you know, planted seeds or whatever if they want it to be a very different story? So I don't have any problem with that.
That's true. Yeah. Because I mean, what was the other show? Andor was kind of the same, right? Like, I don't know if he didn't read or watch anything, but
I think he was familiar. Obviously,
he didn't want it to be like,
yeah. And he basically
so
said
similar.
He basically said, like, I don't care about Star Wars lore.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not making it to do that. I'm making this thing that's its own thing.
Yep.
It will serve the overall story, and the story will serve it, but that's not like the main importance of it. Which, and we know Andor was a fucking banger.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know,
So it just goes to show that you don't have to like live and die by the source material.
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about lately. As you know, I've been in a perpetual war on Twitter with Snyder Bros.
Yep.
And it's like two sides of that fence, right? Like the Snyder folks really like what Zack Snyder did. And the comic book, the fans, right? They don't really like what he did because and I'm one of them. And it's this never-ending battle of the Snyder people being like, you guys are just gatekeepy fans. And like the fans being like, no, we just want our characters that we love to be treated like properly and truthfully. Yeah. And I kind of fall somewhere in the middle. I talk about this with Ed a lot too, because Ed, he's a huge comic book fan. More than me. Well, I don't know if bigger fan is the right word, but he's way more knowledgeable about comic books than I am. Right. He's a collector. Like he collects rare comics, gets them graded, trades them, sells them, all that good stuff. So, but he is he's very like strict on changing characters, specifically like, you know, and you agree with him and I agree with him. Like race swaps are stupid. Gender swaps are generally stupid. And some cases they're fine. Obviously, who the fuck cares? Like if Little Mermaid's black or Spanish or fucking Italian, like who cares? It's a mermaid, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's different.
In the case of a character like Superman, like I don't think we need a black Clark Kent. Just make a black Kryptonian who's a different character. You know what I mean?
Right.
With a different backstory and a different thing. So in that regard, I agree. But he like hates what they've done to Thor, that they've made Thor like the kind of comedic relief. I'm sort of like, well, I don't actually care because I still think he's a good character. He doesn't, but you know, so I'm a little bit sort of in the middle of the road. But I think with a character like Superman or Batman, and I've discussed this ad nauseum at this point, you're probably sick of hearing about it. But like when you have a character that's 85 years old, like I think you should be respectful to the source material. And,
of course.
And at least not change the core principles that who makes the character who he is. Like one of the arguments. Sorry, go ahead.
I think there is certain rules you have to follow, especially with the older characters that have already been super fleshed out and this sort of thing. I think there's more room if it's like a newer character, but I think you have to follow like that's like guidelines that you just shouldn't change. There's no reason to change them.
Right. You could change other stuff, you know?
Yeah.
You know, but like, for instance, we've talked about Man of Steel plenty and Superman and like how the death of his father like really shapes who he is. And that was like drastically changed in Man of Steel. And it creates a totally different character that's just not Superman. Like he wears red and blue and he fucking got the S on it, but it's not Superman at the end of the day. And one of the big arguments I've been seeing online between Snyder Bros and the comic book bros is that Batman doesn't kill. And in Snyder's universe, Batman was fucking mowing people down. And the Snyder people were like, yo, listen, this is a broken Batman. He's like lost his way. And like through Clark and like Clark's sacrifice, like he learns to be Batman again. And I'm kind of on the side of the comic book fans because it's the one thing that separates Batman from all the criminals, right?
Right.
Like Batman is on this path because he watched his parents get gunned down. But Batman's not like a stable guy, clearly. Like he's a fucking crazy person who needs like intense therapy.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that, but he's not a killer because even though he's beating the fuck out of people on the streets and it's questionable, he won't cross that line because that is the boundary that separates him from the criminals at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you remove that,
you don't even need Batman to fill that role. I feel like if you want if you're looking for that type of revenge-driven thing or whatever,
go read The Punisher.
Fucking mass murder. Yeah, just go read Punisher
or John Wick, or go watch John. Like, there's other characters that do those things, right?
That could fill that. Yeah, like we don't need all, because if they're just gonna start making everybody the same, it's like,
right,
you know.
I mean, you have another character in Batman. I mentioned him a couple of shows ago, Jason Todd, who was one of Batman's proteges. He gets fucking beat the fuck up by the Joker, comes back with a vengeance, and starts killing motherfuckers. So he's essentially Batman, but who is crossing that line. So instead of changing Batman, You have other characters that are similar, that do those different things. And another big example of this is Spider-Man. You know, if you want to get representation in there, we don't need a black Peter Parker. You just make a black Spider-Man, which they did with Miles Morales, and he's super fucking popular.
That's simple.
So, you know, it just depends on how they do it. So in regards to this story that he didn't read Secret Invasion, like, I don't really give a fuck if it's not exactly like the fucking comic books, because the spirit of it is there. So, anyway, so still in Disney news, in a roundtable with Hollywood Reporter, Pedro Pascal revealed he basically mailed it in for season 3 of Mandalorian. Meaning like he didn't really give full effort. Now most of the show has been him performing in voiceovers because he's wearing, I don't know if you haven't watched it, but the Mandalorian code is that you never take off your helmet and reveal your face.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, okay, he doesn't have to be on set. You could have a body double. So season 1, he reveals his face once, and in season 2, twice, I think. Reportedly, he will not be doing the same going forward. And filming of season 3 was almost fully done with body doubles and voiceovers. So maybe there's...
I think that's fine, but him not giving his all that's not good. He should still, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Are they planning to end the show, or are they just going to keep running it with him just half-assing it? That doesn't seem
I don't know
good
if
for the fans.
I don't know if it's like he didn't care.
Okay.
But I don't know. It seems a little bit bizarre. Like the way it made it sound is that like he kind of just was like, yeah, like I'm not there anyway. Like he does a fine enough job, but it's a voiceover of like a monotone dude who has like no real emotion. So
right.
I don't know, but maybe that speaks to the fact that like of why I'm not like super into season 3. Maybe there's something subliminally that I'm noticing where I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, could be.
But apparently he might no longer be playing the character according to some of the stuff I'm reading, but we'll see.
Wow.
I mean, it's not necessary. If they can get him to come in and do voiceovers, like whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So speaking of Star Wars, we know that the Rey Skywalker Star Wars movie is on the horizon. And
another one.
Production Weekly is reporting that it is set to shoot in April 2024, and that the title currently is Star Wars New Jedi Order. And that name is nearly identical to the series of Star Wars Expanded Universe novels that were released in like the late 90s, early 2000s. The report also mentions that a May 22nd, 2026 release date for the film is planned. And we have a little bit of synopsis. Set roughly 15 years after Rey's victory over Palpatine at the end of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, the sequel delves into Rey's courageous endeavor to restore the Jedi Order, where she assumes the role of a mentor to 2 promising young students, a girl and a boy. As their training progresses, it becomes evident that the girl possesses an extraordinary ability and destined to emerge as the future leader. This is going to be directed by Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, so I apologize if I didn't. And that is the director of the Miss Marvel show. And it's being written by a Peaky Blinders creator, Stephen Knight. And
that's interesting.
So
I mean, that could be good. Boy and a girl. Is it gonna turn out that they're actually brother and sister, and is this gonna be a repeat of everything we've already seen before?
Well, if it's the story that I think it is, it's based off of the story where Luke is basically training Han and Leia's kids. One becomes a Sith, one becomes a Jedi, and boom goes the dynamite. But here's my thing. I've talked about this a lot. I'd rather just see other new stories like The Mandalorian, like Andor, things that are like loosely tied to the universe, but just showing other things. Like I just don't care about the Jedi anymore. I really don't. And I know that might be like,
we don't care.
Yeah, I know that might be sinful to say, but like, I just don't care, because any of like all the really good stuff that's outside of like the main movies, it basically all explains that the Jedi were not really great.
Right.
We've had this discussion before. The Jedi and the Sith are two very like almost radical groups of people that are like misinterpreting the Force and what true balance means in the Force and this for their own personal gain, right?
Straight up. It's like monks versus like witches or something like something like that.
So and I don't remember how far you got in this new trilogy, but basically it ends with Luke like realizing this about the Jedi and basically like burning all the ancient texts and destroying ancient Jedi temples and basically just trying to like wipe it away. So again, maybe this will maybe taking Luke's like advice or tutelage, she'll be trying to establish a new Jedi order that's like different. But like again, I don't care about the Jedi anymore, man. Like I just don't. And honestly, she's just not that interesting of a character to me. I know, like I've gotten shit from this. I've had many arguments with a friend of mine about it because she loves these new trilogy and she loves Rey and she loves like the connection between her and Ben that I think was like forced and fabricated at the last minute to just make like a fucking ending. But I just don't find her that interesting. And it's probably because of the way that they wrote it. Like every movie was completely different. Like there was no like real connecting threads that made sense. It's like she's a fucking basically a scrapper and her parents abandoned her, but now she's like got all these crazy fucking powers for no reason without any training. And then now she's just Palpatine's daughter. Okay. Granddaughter. It's like, all right. I don't know. It's not very compelling to me.
It's getting like it's like the Scream fucking series. Like everyone's related. It's like the same shit.
Right. It's the same thing with like Halloween. Like if you look through all the trilogies, it's like this is the daughter of the cousin of that person who was stabbed by Michael. So now it's just like it's too much. It's too much. Yeah. Like enough already. Yep. But it's being made because, you know, money's a thing and Star Wars makes money. But,
yes, it does.
But maybe not. We're seeing fucking all these comic book movies bomb, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Maybe people are going to start getting some Star Wars fatigue like they're getting superhero fatigue.
Maybe.
We'll see. Speaking of money, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 did quite well in the box office. It's now set to be released on Disney Plus on July 7th, so in a couple of days.
Nice.
And physical copies won't be released till August 1st. Are you going to watch it again, Marvin?
Yeah, I think so.
For you, it'd be worth it, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Marvel, Aubrey Plaza is joining the many actors to play in Marvel properties.
Is she a good actress? She's just been in like comedies, right?
She does mostly. She does mostly
really
comedies.
Much of her stuff.
I've seen her in like this really dark comedy. I forget what it was called. It was called. Let me look it up. Actually, it was actually a really good movie. What the fuck was this movie? She was in a movie called Safety Not Guaranteed, which she was very good in that, and that's like kind of like a comedy drama thing. And then the movie I'm talking about though is called Ingrid Goes West, and she basically plays a movie. She's just essentially a social media stalker, and she like moves to LA and integrates herself into the life of an Instagram star that she like idolizes.
Yeah.
And she was really good in that role. I do think she's a good actress. So I'm interested to see who or what she's playing. She's in Agatha Coven of Chaos.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I don't know who she's playing, but she's quoted as saying, "Without saying anything really, I had a blast. I loved my character in that as well. And I think it's the most elevated Marvel material that's out there. So it was cool to jump into that world with those people specifically. Now, let's take this with a grain of salt because actors are going to say what actors say.
In it.
They're never going to say like, nah, this sucked. I hated working on it. Like that's just not the reality of the business really, or what people say.
That's right.
And also at the end of the day, this was a show that was greenlit because there was like a popular song from WandaVision that was like circulating the internet for a couple days.
Wow.
So, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I don't think it could be good, but again, another character that I just don't give a fuck about. And I don't think this needs a show. So, but they're doing it anyway. And she says it's, she says
most
it's great.
Elevated.
Yeah. The most,
what does that even
the
mean?
most elevated. Like she plays the same character in everything she's in, but for the most part, it's like this talk of like elevated.
That's so true. Yeah.
It's like, give me a fucking break, bro. Like just stop it. She also was in Legion, which is the show that Dusty loves very much.
Okay.
That's Noah Hawley's take on Professor Xavier's son, David, and he claims he put a note here, still one of the best Marvel shows to date, ... So I read that for Dusty. All right, so that's about it for Disney news. On to the good old WB. They are fucking up bad. So I sent you the link the other day that they're trying to sell a bunch of shit. 3 sources have confirmed to Variety that Warner Brothers Discover is negotiating to sell around half of the studio's film and TV music publishing assets for around $500 million, with Sony in the lead to obtain them. Universal Music Publishing currently has an administration deal with Warner Brothers over the catalog. $49.5 billion in debt since the merger with Discovery.
Oh, 49.5 billion.
Yeah. Now there's been some talk about whether or not they're going to even be able to afford making James Gunn's DCU universe.
Oh.
And I mean, it could be a reality. I mean, if they're hemorrhaging money like this makes it out, these movies have an insane budget. If you're not making, so
they gotta get that out. That's the only thing that's gonna save them.
So The Flash did bomb. Dusty argued with me last episode, but it is a bomb. It's a straight bomb. It did worse than Black Adam, which was a bomb. I think it made $210 million worldwide at this point. So if they're investing all this money into films and they're losing money, you can't keep that going.
Yeah.
And if you look back, the early Snyder films did make a lot of money. Batman v Superman did. Man of Steel did. I think Justice League probably made a lot of money, but I mean, again, another thing with these Twitter people, they seem
if you don't make money with Batman, Superman, and Justice League, you're fucking up bad.
Well, that's the thing. Everybody's been pointing to the Flash bombing. I don't know if you've seen what I tweet, but I keep posting a picture of just the Rotten Tomatoes score of each movie.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Because there is no relation to what a movie makes versus how good it is. In fact, the movie that we're reviewing in a little bit, Little Children, also bombed at the box office. And it's a fantastic movie. So there is no relation to the two. So I keep posting the Rotten Tomato scores because people liked The Flash better, regardless of how much money it made. So there is some question as to what's going on here. Do people have superhero fatigue? Maybe. We are pretty inundated with that stuff. Or are people just hey, DC makes bad movies. I'm not going to go pay $20 to do it when it's going to come out in a month. I could see that being a thing too. But I will say, and Ed can confirm because he's having the same experience, all these fucking movies that I've gone to see over the last couple of weeks, months, theater's been empty. So it was like that for Ant-Man, it was like that for Guardians, and it was like that for The Flash.
Damn, it's crazy that it was like that for Guardians.
Yeah, I was shocked. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems like, right, the Warner Brothers can't lose with a Batman movie. The Batman made a lot of money. The Joker made a lot of money. Obviously, the Nolan trilogy made a lot of money.
Right.
They might just be yeah, fuck it. Fuck this universe shit. Let's just make Batman movies going forward. So we're just going to get Batman movies constantly. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But speaking of the Justice League and the Snyder people, they're going to get real mad at this. Warner Brothers is releasing a DCEU 4K box set, and it will feature Joss Whedon's theatrical version of Justice League and not the Snyder cut. Because Warner Brothers has been pretty adamant about the fact that up until this point, the theatrical release is canon and Zack Snyder's cut is not canon.
Wow.
That's a gut punch if you're a Snyder fan.
Yeah.
Speaking of The Flash, as I mentioned when I talked about it a little bit last week, and as you might have seen online, a lot of people are really just shitting on the CGI in this movie.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. It was bad.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the VFX artists who worked on The Flash, Zach Mulligan, came out and said, quote, when you're putting out this many projects with shorter turnarounds, the VFX will always look worse. So if it looks like...
Yeah.
If it looks like a visual effect shot in The Flash was made in a week, it's probably because it was. So this is, again, another notch on the belt of VFX artists complaining about these big giant studios not giving them ample time to produce the type of content, the quality content that should be made. And like these VFX artists, we're having a fucking writer's strike right now. We might get a VFX artist strike soon because these guys are overworked.
God, it's gonna be bad. Everything's gonna be stick figures and fucking terrible scripts.
These guys are overworked, underappreciated. Apparently, a lot of people on Flash like actually quit during the production of it because they're just like, fuck this. And also there was a guy on TikTok too who said like he was explaining how it works. Like VFX studios actually have to not audition. They basically I can't think, but lack of a better word, they basically audition for a job on a film. So like, you know, the studios don't always work with the same places. I'm sure like Marvel does at this point, maybe for the most part, because all the assets are made and stuff like that. But you know, there needs to be a fight for fairer treatment of these VFX artists because it's an incredible art form. They're extremely talented, and it sucks that when a movie comes out that by no fault of their own doesn't look the way that audiences expected, that these guys are just getting shit on. Like, so
we did what we could.
Yeah, like why don't you go make fucking CGI, bum? You're sitting on Twitter complaining about it. Now I didn't complain. I just want to throw that out there. I said it was not good, but I didn't complain. In fact, I said the opposite. It did not take away from me enjoying the film. So I just needed to throw that in there. I am an ally.
I think it's funny that guy's last name Mulligan.
Yeah.
Give him another chance. Let him redo it.
Yep. You know, and there's quite a contrast too in a movie like Avatar, let's say, that has insane visual effects, but that movie took 10 years to fucking make. Right?
Hey.
So that's the difference.
Off.
Right. Yeah, that's the difference.
That's the payoff.
Yeah. So still on Warner Brothers, Superman Legacy, as we were just saying, maybe not going to happen. But an insider, Jeff Snyder, on the Hot Mic podcast said they're going to try to announce Superman and Lois, maybe Lex, at Comic-Con. This past weekend, it was big news that they were doing screen tests for the characters. And screen testing is basically actors in contention for the roles in costumes, acting out scenes, doing stuff like that before they make a decision. James Gunn.
Lex and who else?
Lex, Superman, Lois, probably the big names.
And Lois, probably the big name,
yeah.
I saw a tweet about fans casting Bryan Cranston as Lex, and he was like, "Oh, that's just lazy." I'm like, it's not, because he said just because he has a bald head. I'm like, no, it's not just that. He
would be a good Lex. He would.
Yeah, not just the bald head.
But he would just be Walter White is really what he would be.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
Walter White with billions of dollars.
He would be Lex after Breaking Bad. Like he lived somehow.
Well, Walter White was successful. Yeah. Like the successful empire.
Yeah. He actually got to spend his like big stack of money at the storage facility. You remember that scene? What a great scene in that show where like they're both just standing there looking at it and she's like, how much more do you want, bro?
Right.
That's really the moment where you're like, oh, it's not about the money.
Right.
It ain't about the money. But yeah, so this insider said that they might release it at Comic-Con, which is in a month or two, I think. August, maybe. I forget. San Diego Comic-Con, I think, is August. Maybe they'll trot them out. I don't know if that secret will hold. It seems like a decision will be made relatively soon, possibly as soon as next week. And actually earlier today, before Dusty sent me this, I saw on Twitter that there are rumblings now that they might actually release the cast this week. So,
wow.
We will.
Have you ever been to a Comic-Con?
Yeah, I've been to the New York Comic-Con. I've never been to San Diego Comic-Con. San Diego's like the granddaddy one. Speaking of conventions, I didn't actually say earlier. That's what I did this weekend. I went to a reefing convention called Reefapalooza.
Ooh, nice.
I bought a bunch of new corals for my tank. That was pretty fun.
Nice.
I got to brush shoulders with some big YouTube personalities
that's cool.
In the hobby. So weird seeing somebody who you watch like every day on YouTube in real life.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so that was cool. Yeah, so still in WB, Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, and Paul Thomas Anderson have been talking separately and jointly with David Zaslav over fears that Warner Brothers might shut down TCM after some internal restructuring. Turner Classic Movies, I believe. Zaslav put DeLuca and Abdi in charge of the division to quell fears after getting rid of its current chief of 25 years. So I guess some people are concerned that Turner Classic Movies might be going away, and I think Turner Classic Movies is like...
Dusty's going to be in shambles. That sounds like it's Westerns for sure.
It was launched in 1994, so it's been around for a very long time.
I can't even, the website doesn't work for me.
But it basically is like a museum of sorts, curating like history's greatest films, essentially. So people are a little bit worried. Where are we going to watch these things?
Hey,
I know where I'm watching them. There are solutions.
Where there's a problem, there's a solution.
Especially for Marvin. If you need... Marvin's a fixer, bro. If you need something...
I'm a fixer.
Yeah, you call Marvin up.
That's right. I'm like the guy in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. Oh, fucking the Fox. Yeah. You mentioned the writer's strike still going on. So it's been long, and apparently the next negotiation, this might be going on at least till the end of July now, when the next negotiation might take place. So we're getting fucked big time. Also, in similar fashion, the SAG, Screen Actors Guild, their contract with film producers is set to expire on June 30th, and they might strike too. So it seems like the whole film industry is just imploding.
Wow.
We might as well just have a great reset.
Take note, America.
Yeah.
That's right.
We might as well just have a great reset. Just fucking blow it all away and start fresh. We'll go back to being cavemen and see who survives. And talking about Comic-Con, Marvel announced they will not be presenting at Hall H this year, which is that's the big daddy event at Comic-Con. Hall H is where all the cool shit gets announced, all the big stuff.
Okay.
Universal, Netflix, Sony, and HBO are also reportedly out. So, yeah, I don't know. In 2019, Marvel was there. In 2021, they were absent for obvious reasons, COVID. 2022, they were there, and now they will not be there for whatever reason. But this, I think, is related to the writer's strike. Obviously, Marvel's they've announced a bunch of delays, and there was also some side rumors circulating that Kevin Feige is doing what I speculated he might do, taking a little step back and saying, okay, our last couple movies haven't been very well received. What's going on here?
Right.
So we might see some restructuring in the current slate of films to be coming out. Especially, truthfully, honestly, I think why they would probably not be going is because why announce shit if there's shit up in the air with Jonathan Majors and now the other guy who played fucking Namor. So I don't know. We'll see.
Right. Yeah.
Couple of other pieces here from Vulture. Sony Pictures Animation is also now taking a hit, and they are getting complaints from their animators. As one anonymous artist is claiming, over 100 fellow artists quit the film due to being overworked.
Oh my God.
4 artists were interviewed. All pointed to perfectionist producer Phil Lord, and this is from the movie Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse that just released. I'm sorry, Beyond the Spider-Verse is the one coming out in 2024. There's no way.
Movies are fucked.
Yeah.
Where's Shakespeare? We need somebody. We need fucking, we need flip books or something, dude. I don't know what. Everything is going to shit now. Yeah.
That's my thumbnail, by the way. You just put your hand over your face. There's no way that movie's coming out on schedule. There's been progress on the pre-production side of things, but as far as the production side goes, the only progress that's been made on the third one is any exploration or tests that were done before the movie was split into 2 parts. Everyone's been fully focused on Across the Spider-Verse and barely crossing the finish line. And now it's like, oh yeah, we have to do the other one. So again, more people being overworked. Surprise, surprise. Out of Variety, El Muerto has been pulled from Sony's calendar. That was one of the many, many ridiculous Spider-Man films they had planned.
They had like the Bad Bunny guy, I think.
Yeah, it was. I don't even know who that is, but yeah,
he's an artist. He's a singer.
It was originally. Rapper. Is he good?
Rapper. I don't know. I don't really listen to it because he mainly just he's rapping or singing in Spanish, so.
Okay.
I don't really listen to him. Yeah. He's like one of the top artists, though, for sure.
Really?
Yeah. worldwide.
I gotta tell you, I cannot get on board with you kids' rap these days. I'll tell you what.
Kids,
yeah,
come on.
Nah, you like a lot of that shit. I hear people blasting it when they drive by in cars and shit, and it all sounds the same.
You gotta get with the times, old man.
Nah, it's like all this like trap shit. I can't take it. I don't like it.
Yeah, you gotta learn to love it.
So Muerto was originally scheduled for January 12th, 2024. It's being replaced by their biblical epic, The Book of Clarence. So completely degaff about either of those two things.
What the fuck? The Book of Clarence?
And
Is that
finally,
one of the forgotten disciples?
yeah, I get it. Clarence. He was the black disciple.
Oh my God.
Fucking Clarence.
Sounds like it's from the civil rights era.
Yeah, right? So, poor old Henry Cavill, man. This guy, all he wants to do is just make stuff that he likes, and he just gets fucked at every step. And his career is just going to be remembered as like a failure, but hopefully not. But he loves.
You think so?
I mean, listen, he loves Superman. Wanted to make Superman. Was given this dog shit fucking script by Zack Snyder, and this failed film universe.
Yeah.
Out of that, loves the fucking Witcher games. Loves the books. Was put into this fucking role that he's dreamt of playing. Dog shit fucking show, and now he's out. And here's another story. GoldenEye director Martin Campbell talked about Henry Cavill as James Bond. And apparently Cavill auditioned for Casino Royale. And the quote of the director is, "He looked great in the audition. His acting was tremendous. And look, if Daniel didn't exist, Henry would have made an excellent Bond. He looked terrific. He was in great physical shape, very handsome, very chiseled. He just looked a little young at that time back then." So this poor guy is just... He's getting the short end of it. So
could have aged him up.
Poor guy. But he's making his thing for Amazon, so we'll see. He already kind of was James Bond in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Like, that movie's great. He played a spy, a British spy, and it was fucking awesome. So it's like, we don't need James Bond.
I haven't seen that. The Man from
you
U.N.C.L.E.
should watch that. It was a really good movie.
Huh.
But there you have it, folks. There's the news. Don't thank me. Thank Dusty. He
shout out,
scoured the interwebs, even though he couldn't be here today to deliver this news. I hope I did it justice. I think I did. But let's get on to today's review. Again, as we said, this is Make Marvin Watch, the Make Marvin Watch episode of June. Every month, Dusty and I alternate, taking turns, picking a movie for Marvin to watch that he hasn't seen that we think he should. Now, I got a confession to make, Marvin.
Uh-oh.
I'd say like 99% of the time that I pick a movie for you to watch, it's because I just want to watch it again. It has nothing to do with whether or not I want you to see it.
Wow.
No, I'm kidding. But this is Little Children that came out in 2006. And I got a pretty bold statement. I think this is one of the best movies of the early 2000s. And I very rarely hear people talk about it. I actually never hear people talk about it.
Yeah, I never had heard of it before this.
Yeah, it's based on a book called Little Children by Tom Perrotta. I've never read it. But from what I understand, the movie does a really, really good job at adapting the book for the screen. Fans of the book were very pleased.
I think that's true because the movie felt longer than 2 hours, but like in a good way.
It felt very long.
I was super immersed as if I was reading a book. Yeah. And it felt like they were able to really pack a lot absolutely. Character development into like 2 hours. It was crazy.
Oh, absolutely.
It was nuts.
I agree. I think this is a very immersive film. And so this was co-written by the author of the book, Tom Perrotta, along with Todd Field, who wrote and directed. It stars Kate Winslet as Sarah Pierce, Jennifer Connelly as Kathy Adamson, Patrick Wilson as Brad Adamson, Jackie Earle Haley as Ronnie McGorvey, Noah Emmerich as Larry Hedges, and a couple of supporting roles in the film. Yeah, Larry. A couple of supporting roles in the film. But this movie very much centers around the lives of our five main characters here: Sarah, Brad, Larry, Ronnie, and Kathy. And I guess Ronnie's mom, May McGorvey, played by Phyllis Somerville.
Right.
And a little bit of shout out to Raymond Barry, who played Bullhorn Bob, the guy at the football field. The coach. He was pretty funny. And I like that his character's Bullhorn Barry. But yeah, so now you mentioned being immersed, right? This movie has one of the best trailers to a movie I've ever seen. I don't know if you watched the trailer, but I recommend taking a look. It's very ominous and like dark, and the poster is the same. It's just them with the dark backdrop, and they're laying naked next to each other. Very ominous feeling. And honestly, I don't know if you felt this, but this movie feels very ominous to me. Straight from the opening. Now, let's be clear. This is a drama, like romance movie. It is not a thriller. It is not scary in any way whatsoever.
No.
But there is this ominous tone throughout this whole movie.
It's like a dark cloud looming.
And I remember the first time I watched this movie, I just was waiting for an axe to drop, like something terrible to happen. Like I was waiting for this like turn to kind of take place in the movie. That kind of happens towards the end, but not like I had thought. Like there's that moment which we'll talk about, but that's a pretty like
I know which moment you're talking about, and I definitely thought it was something terrible, worse than what happened.
I thought something worse was going to happen. I thought it was going to flip and be like, oh wait, this is a horror movie now, or a thriller or something. But everything about this movie really sells that feeling. Like from the opening, it's like it opens like a horror movie. You're like, oh shit, like what's going on here? But like, yeah, it's just this like, I don't know, it's just this feeling it's like
a dread. It's like a feeling of dread.
And it's such an interesting,
like something bad is coming.
Yeah,
and a storm is brewing.
Mm-hmm. Both literally and figuratively in the film. But it's a very interesting tone for a movie like this that I've never seen before or since, and it makes this movie a standout. I'll just be clear and say this is one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. It's in my top 10, 100%. So I'm very biased towards this movie, but I think for good reason. But basically, the plot of this movie is our character's Brad. He's a stay-at-home dad, and Jennifer Connelly is his wife, Kathy. She's a documentary filmmaker, and there's a tension between them that isn't really like explicitly stated, but you could tell from watching them. They have financial struggles. They mention that they rent their house.
Right.
He's obviously he went to school to
law school.
He went to law school and has failed the bar exam twice. And throughout the movie, she's sort of trying to like budget. He says at one point he wants to get a cell phone, and she's like, "Yeah, we'll see where we're at next month."
I actually didn't pick up on that.
No.
I mean, I remember that happening, but I didn't tie it to the money troubles.
Yeah, she says, well, and remember, this movie came out in 2006, so back then cell phones were kind of just starting to become popular. So she's like, yeah, we'll take a look next month. At one point, she's like, she leaves him a note, like, can you look over this? And then as he's reading through these things, she calls him to be like, hey, did you take a look at that thing? And it's like all this stuff that he really likes, like magazine subscriptions and
Sports Illustrated,
things. And she's basically like, yeah, do you need these? He's like, I don't need them per se. Yeah, I guess we could cancel them. So they definitely have a little bit of a conflict, but it seems like a loving marriage enough. And then there's also
some weirdness there too with like her and the son. Like it was very weird. Like
there's this there's early in the movie we get to see him at home with his kid, and the narration, which we'll talk about in a minute.
I love the narration.
It's the best part of this movie. The narration tells us that the kid is always wearing this jester hat when he's at home with his dad, but as soon as the mother comes home, he throws it off. And the narrator says, like, this makes Brad feel bad, as if everything that came before just didn't matter. But I mean, I feel like
what's that old poem or movie about the fucking like the son that wants to like have sex with his mom or something or something along those lines, or is that like some type of condition or complex or something?
Wait, say that again?
What's the complex where the son wants to have sex with his mom?
I don't know what it's called, but I don't think that was the case.
It was some weird shit happen. Not like that deep, but like...
Well, I mean...
The way she was acting, it was like very weird.
Yeah, there was that moment where like she wants the kid to sleep in bed and he wants to have sex. So he's like, can we just get the kid out of bed? And she's like, no, but he's so beautiful. Yeah, I didn't get any like sexual thing from that. I think
like,
that's just like...
but like... along those lines, it's like,
well, being a mother and a father are definitely two very different things, right?
Sure.
A mother has a very different bond with the child as it grew inside of her fucking body, and then she had to squeeze it through something the size of like a lemon. So it's a very different experience for men and women, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But like they always say, like the bond a mother has with their kid is just, it's special because, like, there's breastfeeding, and it's just a very different thing, right? And in this particular case, right, like, I guess in normal parental situations, like the dad works and then comes home from work, and the kid's excited, yay, daddy's home. So it probably goes both ways, really. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying. She had like this. She definitely had like
weird obsession or something. Not obsession.
Weird obsession with the kid. Yeah.
I don't have kids, so maybe.
Yeah.
I don't understand quite yet.
I can't really speak on that, but their marriage for sure has a bit of attention in it for financial reasons, and also because of this. Like, Brad clearly doesn't feel like he's being fulfilled at home, which we'll talk about more, obviously. And then jumping over to Kate Winslet's character, Sarah, she's a stay-at-home mom, and she's just immediately very not fulfilled. She's living this humdrum mom life that it's not exactly clear as to whether or not like she wants to be a mother. Like, she definitely loves her daughter, but I don't know if this was particularly the life that she had planned for herself.
Right. Yeah, I get that vibe too.
Wakes up, does fucking whatever, doesn't really have a time to herself because of the fucking kid, and then takes her to the park and has to deal with the fucking moms. And there's one moment the narrator is like, well, she just waits for her husband to come home so when she could have some time for herself. And then we have Noah Emmerich's character, Larry Hedges, and he's the bully of the film. And he basically is a ex-cop. He got kicked off the force, which we learn later because he was responding to a call about a potential shooter at a mall, and he ended up killing a 13-year-old kid who was just kind of playing with a toy gun. Yep. So he has post-traumatic stress disorder from that, and now he's going after the town's pedophile, played by Jackie Earle Haley, Ronnie. And this guy has recently been released from prison, and the whole town is sort of in an uproar because he's just among them and a child predator, essentially.
Right.
They don't actually say what he did other than the fact that it was indecent exposure.
Yeah, right.
So, probably just showed his junk to some kids. Which that's a no-no.
That is a no-no. They tried to make it seem like he wasn't that bad of a person, and then we do find out later that he is pretty fucked up. Okay, so before we start picking apart that stuff, let's talk about the narration, right? That's my favorite thing about this movie, and it's this voice of God narration that I understand it's how it's done in the book. So a lot of books have narrations and stuff like that, right? That's how books are told. It's very unique to see it in a film like this. There's narration in other movies, but not quite like this, because this voice of God is not just narrating like plot points, it's narrating the inner thoughts and feelings of the characters. Right. So you're and I tried to explain this to you a couple weeks ago, and I don't know if you really understood what I was saying, but not that you're dumb. I don't know if I was really explaining it, but like while you're watching characters interact with one another on screen, you're also hearing their inner thoughts and stuff. So it's just very unique because it's a way for you to really judge them outside of just what's happening on the screen. And it's a way for you to understand what they're thinking and feeling outside of the actors' performances. Because a lot of stuff time in films, things that aren't just straight exposition, it's all in body language and, facial features and stuff like that, which is amazing that actors could do that. But it's, I don't know, just a totally different level when you're like experiencing it this way, at least for me. Yeah, for sure.
And it also lets us see the consequences of like kind of what we're rooting for and like fear for as the story progresses. And I actually think that's why I have that, and maybe you had that feeling, that like that ominous feeling through the movie, because maybe it's just my own brain like projecting it onto what I'm watching, right?
Right.
So I love the narration. It's my favorite part of the movie. I think it's so unique and
works wonders here for sure.
It makes it like a totally different. It makes it like a totally different movie. Like if you took that out of the movie, it might not be as good, really.
For sure.
But yeah. So within this narration, right? Like so, back to Ronnie being a good person. He's not really a bad person. Like, he has a disease. And he says it at one point in the film, like his mother's trying to sort of like set him up with a girl. She's trying to put ads out in the paper for him to go on like a date and stuff. And he's like, Mom, I have what do you call it? Sexual psychosis or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Which basically like, you know, it's a disease. So like that kind of speaks to maybe to like a larger philosophical question of like, you know, if you have something that's diagnosable, does that make you a bad person? Like, I'm sure he really wouldn't want to do those things given the choice, right?
Right.
You know,
I would think so.
Like she says,
clearly it wasn't.
Well, she says at one point. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to say that before I forget the line because it's fresh in my head. She says to him, "Don't you want a girlfriend your own age?" And he's like, "I wish I did, but I don't." So what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, well, he goes on the date with the girl that his mom says. Well, I guess she finds him in the paper or vice versa, whatever. And they meet up. They have dinner. It seems good, and then it's not good anymore in the car.
He starts jerking off.
He starts jerking off in front of her. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So I don't know what his condition is. Like, I don't know if he is specific. I don't know if I don't know.
Well, Jackie Earle Haley also played him to be, and again, I don't know anything outside of the movie with how the character is, but he played him sort of like he was a little bit like on the spectrum, maybe a little bit, because he was like very childish. He said "mommy" a lot, and like, he didn't seem like he was just like a fully functioning adult with this issue. It seemed like he had some other stuff going on too. But yeah, I mean, I almost saw it as sort of like an OCD thing. Like, people with OCD, they can't help it. Like, if they don't do their little rituals and ticks and things, like they fucking lose their shit. So it kind of felt similar to that, you know?
Yeah, it actually, I mean, I guess that's why the movie is called Little Children, because everyone is showing their immaturity and like lack of self-awareness and shit like that.
Everyone in this movie is very immature for many reasons, but I challenge that notion a little bit. So, you know, the movie is a lot about fulfillment. It's like the main story, right?
Yeah,
and it boils down into every character. Jackie Earle Haley, Ronnie, he's fulfilled by things that aren't under his own control because he has a disease. Noah Emmerich's character, Larry, the ex-cop, like his fulfillment is to make Ronnie the scapegoat for his basically accidental killing of a kid.
Right.
And like the way his life is going, he's using Ronnie as a scapegoat, like to try to correct his mistakes. Like, but he's being like hyper vigilant. He's posting fucking pictures. He's spray painting his sidewalk, standing outside his house with a megaphone, like being a crazy bully, basically.
Yeah.
Which comes to a head. Patrick Wilson, Brad, he's clearly not very fulfilled because his wife is sort of treats him like a mother. Like she's like his mother almost. Like she's very like rigid and like, did you do this? Or we can't afford that, blah, 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 blah. And like, the story makes you question whether or not he even really wants to be a lawyer or not. And she's sort of like kind of pushing him, not pushing him in a bad way. She's actually very like motivational. She's like, oh, I think you'll knock it out of the park this time. But like, he's doing it very much for her because he feels that that's his duty as a husband and father to like get a good job and bring home money and all this stuff.
Right.
You know, Sarah, Kate Winslet's character, she's clearly unfulfilled because she's not happy in her marriage. Her husband's like some fucking rich guy who she's the second wife to him, by the way. And there's a point
bad.
There's a point where the narrator says like, you know, he didn't even bother to redecorate his house after his first marriage. So it's almost sort of like Kate Winslet's treated as just like
just a filler.
Yeah, just kind of like a filler almost. So yeah, the movie's very much about that, and everyone can relate to the feeling of not being fulfilled in some way.
Yeah.
And it's something that like I've had this conversation a lot with one of my friends. I won't name names, but like I feel like our generation, you're a little bit younger than me, Marvin, so maybe you don't have this particular feeling, but when I was growing up, I was always told, you know, got to get a good job, got to get insurance, got to do this, got to get that, like you got to do this, 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 and this. There's a specific set of standards for a life that is established here in the United States, maybe elsewhere, but like there's very little, at least until recent years, there's very little emphasis put on like mental health and what is beneficial towards mental health, which is being fulfilled. Now, what is fulfilling is subjective, but I don't really think, at least in my experience, I don't think a lot of people really give as much thought as is necessary into what would make you fulfilled. It's something that I experienced before you and I met. I was working at Geico. Was I still working at Geico when we met? I don't think so.
Nah, I don't think so.
I was working at Geico and I was fucking miserable. I was making great money, but I was fucking miserable when I made the decision, like, hey, you know what? I'm going to do the graphic design thing full time. And it was because, like, I don't want to be unhappy. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, I don't want to be one of those people that just, like, grinds every fucking day just to make ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, you know, I just don't really buy that idea. So, you know, I actually really feel bad for a lot of the people. I feel bad for pretty much everybody in this movie, but, like, the movie does a really good thing. Like, so, spoilers, Patrick Wilson's character and Kate Winslet end up forming a friendship, and then eventually they form a sexual relationship. So they're both cheating on their spouses, which is not something
that was sad to see, by the way. I was enjoying the
friendship blossoming.
The friendship, what's the word? Wow, I can't even think of the word right now. Whatever.
Well, they were very much leaning. So they were using each other essentially to fill the voids that they felt they had in their lives, right?
Yeah.
And the narrator does a lot of heavy lifting to let you know this.
Right.
You know, it was like impossible for them not to have a sexual relationship at this point.
Yeah, that's fair.
And while you feel bad that it's happening because you know that, like, cheating is wrong, I guess depending on who you are, some people don't think it's wrong. Right. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I'd rather just break up with somebody or divorce somebody if I'm having these feelings for somebody else. But at the same time, though, I can't blame somebody for how they feel about another person, right? And the narrator says this too, and this is the narrator says this about Sarah's perspective, like, you can't help how you feel, right? You just do. Or no, I'm sorry. The narrator says it about Sarah's husband, Richard, played by Gregg Edelman, when they showed him buying fucking panties off the internet to sniff and jerk off. Like, he kind of just, like, resigned himself to that notion of, like, oh, well, I mean, I just feel what I feel. So what's the point of fighting it, right? And I kind of do feel that way too. And I can't think of a worse situation than, like, being in a marriage that you're not fully happy with, or, like, having kids and then you feel stuck. And, like, I'd venture to guess, like, a huge majority of people feel that way, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
like when there's that moment where she goes to the book club with her nanny or friend or whatever.
Yeah.
And the book is kind of about, like, the same
Madame Bovary.
Yeah. The same, like, struggling to, you know, fight for, you know, happiness. Yeah.
I meant to take a quote from that. So she goes to this book club. They're reading Madame Bovary, and one of the cunt mothers is like, she's a fucking slut and a whore for cheating on her husband. Blah, blah, blah.
Right. She's so, yeah.
And Sarah, Kate Winslet's character, being in a similar position, is sort of defending her and being like, no, I actually admire her for fighting against, like, mediocrity or unhappiness, essentially.
That's right.
You know, she's taking charge of her life, whether that is, you know, whether we agree to what she's doing, like, Sarah's doing the same thing.
That's right.
And speaking of the nanny friend lady, when Sarah comes home from her little tryst over the weekend,
she knew. I
think she knew, but she like offers her money, and I never really understood, as many times as I've seen this movie, whether she's insulted that she offered her money or if she's insulted that she just went out to cheat.
I think it's maybe both.
I think it was a little bit of both.
Maybe there was a little, like, hint of her thinking she was trying to kind of pay her off a little bit.
I always thought it was that, of, like, and also, like, oh, you're just leaving your beautiful daughter who I just had a great time with so you can go, like, have sex with some random guy.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I always took it. It was just, like, more about the daughter.
And her daughter just made a picture and a gift for her.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like, your daughter
definitely had something to do with it.
Like, your daughter loves you. What more could you want, really?
Right.
But listen, human beings are complicated, and it's not just as simple as like, oh, I have a daughter, so everything's great. Like,
Right.
we're complicated creatures, and nobody wants to be miserable.
Yep.
And clearly, her and Brad get along very well. They have like I mean, we don't really know his relationship with his wife outside of what we see like in a few scenes, but like, so we can't really say one way or the other. But he's very compatible. They're very compatible, him and Kate.
Right.
So, yeah, again, like I said,
we never see them have sex.
Him and his wife?
Noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, because they're trying to build that like tension between them and like how,
Right.
Just like, again, why he's unfulfilled. Because, listen, I'm not condoning cheating, but like there's a reason why people do it, right? It's not, I can't imagine it's always just, oh, this person's a straight piece of shit, doesn't care about other people's feelings, right?
Right, yeah.
And wants to get their noodle wet. It's got to be more complicated to that. More
For
complicated than that, and more often than not.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a very simple plot. Again, everybody could relate to the feeling of not being fulfilled. I can't really relate to it on the same level as these characters because I'm not married or any of that stuff. I don't have kids, but I did grow up in the suburbs, and the suburbs play a huge role in this movie.
Oh yeah, the setting. The setting of this was great. I think that added to like that feeling of like
dread,
being like stagnant atmosphere, and like being or having to subscribe to like the status quo, like how Brad has to like decide, like all of that plays. The setting helps a lot with that, I think. Yeah,
it takes place in like some suburb in Massachusetts near Boston, I believe. And
New England.
Yeah, and it's very New England. But that like haunting feeling that you get, it actually reminds a lot. In this movie, the cinematography in this movie is great too. There's a lot of like sweeping shots that really like build the tension, and also that like grass is always greener on the other side sort of feeling that these characters have. But it actually reminds me a lot of Halloween, and how the setting of Halloween establishes that sort of haunting feeling. It's not just about Michael Myers. It's about like that. You just, even though like, we've talked about
it. How crazy was that scene where he wins, he scores that touchdown, and she's like cheering for him in the bleachers. But at first it feels like, oh my God, he doesn't want this. Like, this is going to fuck up.
Oh yeah.
His home and everything. Like, it was a couple of seconds before he started smiling.
Well, because at that point, Jennifer Connelly had already been like a little suspicious, so she tasked her mother with following him around, and she was supposed to go to the game. So there's probably a part of him that was like, "Ooh, they could be here, like secretly."
Yeah.
But yeah, so so I was saying suburbs plays a huge role, and I could relate to that because I grew up in the suburbs. I still live in the suburbs, and there's the gossip, there's the routine.
Oh my God.
But again, like we said earlier, the movie really just like takes on all the things that make us human, our flaws.
For sure.
But it's a very simple plot and like a pretty simple story, I think, at the end of the day. Yeah, I have a funny story actually about the first time I saw this movie. I saw it in this little indie theater I used to go to all the time, like local indie theater with my friend George. And this theater, we went to see it in the afternoon because the theater wasn't open like all night like other theaters are. And we were just like, the theater was just packed. The theater's probably the size of my fucking room, but it was just all old people.
Oh, shit.
So there's the scene where like Kate Winslet's getting fucking drilled on the fucking the sink of her basement with that sex scene. Yep. And we were just surrounded by old people. I just remember just like slunking into my chair like,
nobody.
This is awkward.
I thought you were going to say you looked around and it's like.
No, I just imagine like the old people. Yeah, the old people being like, oh my God. Similar to the lady at the book club who was like confused about the anal references in the book that they had read. They're talking about anal.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah. But yeah.
Earlier you mentioned a moment where you thought it was going to take a dark turn.
Yeah. It definitely takes a dark turn, but.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. So I think we were actually thinking about different things, maybe. I thought he might have actually died when he attempted the skateboard.
Yeah.
And
I just thought
that's the dark moment. I thought.
I just thought something terrible was going to happen. Somebody was going to get murdered, or the kid was going to fucking disappear. Something bad was going to happen. But nothing bad ever does happen. It does, but not to these characters. And that's, I think, the key. This movie is really about like individual different characters.
Yeah.
And at one point, the movie shifts over to Ronnie's character, who's continually being harassed by Larry. And at one point, Larry's outside the house with a megaphone. Ronnie's mom comes out to argue with him, and she has a heart attack, eventually dies. And Ronnie is in complete shambles after the death of his mother. And she leaves him with a note that is heartbreaking, and it says, "Be a good boy." And as we talked about earlier, Ronnie is not a good boy. He's a sexual deviant. Again, not by his own choice. And to fulfill his mother's wishes, he cuts his own penis off. And now this was alluded to throughout the movie too, because everybody says
they can castrate.
Why don't they just castrate?
Well, not jokes.
Not jokes, like serious. Like, why don't they just castrate him, get it over with?
Yeah,
it'd be easier that way. And I'm sure he's heard these rumblings around town, so he does just that. He castrates himself, and we get a little redemption moment for Larry too. He realizes like what he's done, like the harm that he's caused these people, and he takes him to the hospital. I
don't think we don't know what happens. I don't think that would have turned out so well for him after him being at the house and basically causing his mom to die.
Well, he was already arrested.
Yeah, I know.
It would have to be Ronnie would have. I mean, in real life, Ronnie would have had to press charges somehow. It wasn't like an assault. Like she just kind of like got worked up.
No, I'm saying him being with the son of the guy and the son's penis being cut off, and he's in his fucking van, and he takes him to the hospital.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah, and so while that's going on, we get the culmination of a little plot between Sarah and Brad. They decide to run away together, and she runs into Ronnie at the park, who's crying, and there's a little moment where like her little girl kind of wanders off at night, and she's freaked out, and she's like, all right, well, this is crazy. Let me just go home. I'm like risking my daughter at this point.
Right.
And Brad was going to meet her, and he stops off at the skateboarders that he spent the entire fucking movie watching skateboard because they remind him of his childhood.
Yeah.
And he decides to get on a skateboard himself and like do this jump, and he busts his ass and like goes unconscious for a little bit, which one of the kids says, "Oh, you dropped this." Like it's a note to his wife, basically saying like bye, I guess, goodbye note.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't need it anymore. So that sparks him to decide to stay with his wife.
It was weird, like both of their choices in what was Kate's character's name?
Sarah
choosing to bring her daughter and I can't think of his fucking name. Brad choosing to leave his son.
Well,
I was saying it's interesting because she was like more like detached from her daughter, whereas he was like a great father. So you would think it would kind of be the opposite when it comes to choices they made.
I don't think she was detached. I see what you're saying. I think it was probably just more practical. Like in divorces, the mother generally gets custody, so she probably just took the kid because like, maybe she's the primary caregiver, and he just left the kid because it's like, oh well, my wife would get custody, and I'll see him here and there. That's just kind of how I think
she felt a little detached.
Well, that's why I said earlier there is a little bit of like a question as to whether or not she even wanted a daughter. Like I don't think she doesn't love the daughter, but she's always very like agitated by her because she wants her own fucking space. And when you have a kid, like you don't get that, right?
Right.
It's one of the many reasons why I'm pretty open about the fact that like I don't think I really want children. Like I wouldn't not have children if I was with somebody I loved enough to have the conversation. I would probably do it, but like it wouldn't be my first choice to be like, yeah, let's have fucking kids. Everybody I like, as people in my life, my experience, everybody's just like, yeah, I want to have a kid. I don't get that desire to have children. I really don't. Because the world we live in is fucked up. I don't want to raise a kid in this fucked up place. It's only going to get worse. That's number one. Number two, they're a financial burden. True. And number three, it's like you have to devote every second of your time to them. And like, I don't know that I'm prepared to do that. I like having my own free time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah.
So I completely get where she's coming from. And that's the cool thing about this movie. Even though people are doing questionable things and stuff that you may not agree with, the movie really lets you feel for these characters and empathize with what they're going through. And,
for sure.
My only one. It's not even a gripe. I want to see how you interpreted this ending. I don't think this is a really happy ending, to be honest with you. I mean, it ends up Ronnie obviously cuts his dick off, and that sucks. But Larry gets a little bit of a redemption. He could make up for how fucked up he was to Ronnie, and maybe they form a friendship or whatever the fuck. Brad goes back to his wife Kathy, and obviously Sarah decides to stay with her husband. But like thinking beyond what the movie shows, like what happens from this point on? Because they're not happy in their marriages. Neither of them are.
Nope.
So do they just resign? Like, I don't see it as a happy ending if they're just resigning to the life that they have.
Nah,
unless he goes back to Kathy and is like, hey, listen, like, I'm missing certain things from our relationship and this is what I need. And there's a conversation and she does the same with her husband. I don't see it as a happy ending because I do get the feeling like you can maybe say
I can see Brad doing that with his wife, but I can't see Sarah doing that with her husband.
Well, what would be her happy ending? Just to get a divorce? Probably joint custody or something like that. So she, you know, like he was obviously not a good guy. He was like, he treated her like we said, like just sort of like a fucking throwaway. And, you know, he's sniffing panties online and shit, doing all sorts of weird stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really see the movie as a happy ending. I guess, you know, thinking beyond.
It's more of just like a back to reality type of ending.
Exactly. And I often, when I watch this, I wonder, do Brad and Sarah like love each other, or are they just lustful? Or is it more just like, like they definitely are like providing things to each other that they were missing.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's love there, but I don't know. It's just a really interesting way to show like a very simple and because it's complex. Feelings are complex. Like it's not just black and white. Like it's usually not like I just want to have sex with you. Like that's very rarely what it is. You need a second?
I'm good. I got my headphones.
Yeah.
My other ones died.
But yeah, so I mentioned earlier in the show that the movie pretty much tanked. It earned $15 million with a $26 million budget.
Wow.
It didn't have like much notoriety around it, although it was nominated for a few Academy Awards. Kate Winslet, Best Actress, Jackie Earle Haley, Best Supporting Actor. Didn't win anything. I think it also was nominated for Best Screenplay or Adaptation or something. It didn't win any awards, but it didn't also make any money, which is unfortunate because I think this is a fantastic movie. It's one of my favorite movies. My main takeaway from this, though, is that it came out in 2006, and the world has seemed to now finally caught up to the themes inside the movie. We now in real life see cops more often held accountable for their actions. Social media has kind of made like jealousy of neighbors and gossip about friends and stuff more accessible. A lot of the stuff in this movie that is now in real life, like completely blown out of proportion because of like the internet and everybody's got a cell phone now and all this stuff, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty interesting watching this movie in modern day. But the other thing about this too is this movie seems like really one of the last American movies that really kind of showed these types of weaknesses and characters and like complicated characters. And that's not to say there aren't any other movies like this, but nowadays lots of character driven dramas seem to be relegated to television. You know, again, that's not to say there aren't movies like this, but it seems like they're more few and far between than they used to be. So that was interesting that I watching this back, because it's been a couple years since I've seen it. So watching it back now, that was interesting, popped into my head.
Yeah, that was interesting.
But before we give our ratings, I just want to say, you mentioned it earlier, the little children aspect of the film and how they're all pretty irresponsible and immature on some levels. The title refers to a line in the book, and the line is, "After all, what was adult life but one moment of weakness piled on top of another? Most people just fell in line like obedient little children, doing exactly what society expected of them at any given moment, all the while pretending that they'd actually made some sort of choice." And that's without even knowing that line, that's something that I think the movie delivers very, very well, because like that's what I said earlier. In my own experience, it seems like people just kind of do the things that they think they have to do because society says they should. Get married, have kids, get a white picket fence house, get a good job, get insurance, go to college. Like, not to toot my own horn, but I've never really thought like that, and I never will, because that's fucking boring, and that does not lead to true happiness.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, so this has is there anything else you wanted to say about it before we wrap up?
No, I think we covered everything. I'm good.
Yeah. So yeah, has a 7.5 on IMDb. I think it deserves to be in the pantheon of great movies that are discussed, if you will. I think it should be considered one of the best movies of all time, because I consider it one of the best movies of all time. So that 7.5 is a little bit low for me. I'm going with a 9, baby.
Oh, wow. A 9.
Yeah.
I think I would give this 7.5. I'd probably bump it up to an 8.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah. That's a good rating. Any reason why you wouldn't go a little bit higher, just out of curiosity?
Let's see.
Because it seemed like you really liked it.
No, I did. I definitely enjoyed it. Let me see.
It also got the rare Marvin Discord message. Little Children was great. You only do that when you really like something usually.
What was it missing? I feel like we deserved more explanation in the ending. I didn't like the open-endedness of the movie. Okay. I understand why they went that way, but I could have went for more closure there after all we've been through with this group of people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just reading the synopsis on Wikipedia of the book. Basically, the last two paragraphs of the synopsis: after Sarah watches Todd win a game for his neighborhood football team, they plan to leave their spouses. I guess the characters' names are different. As Sarah prepares to leave with her daughter, Lucy, Richard calls her from San Diego, where he claimed he was on business, and says that he is leaving her for an internet porn star called Slutty K. Todd, meanwhile, injures himself while attempting a skateboard trick in front of teenage skaters and realizes that he doesn't see a future with Sarah. Sarah takes Lucy to the local playground late at night while waiting for Todd, but Todd never shows up. Just when she starts to lose hope, Ronald appears crying over his mother's death. Much to her own surprise, she feels sympathy for him until he admits that he'd given into his compulsions and killed a girl.
Oh, shit.
Larry suddenly approaches, ready to kill Ronald, but finds it in his heart to offer condolences on May's death. Sarah just sits baffled, wondering how she will raise her daughter, whom she feels she has greatly let down. So, wow, way more somber of an ending in the book than in the movie.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. That was, they deviated quite a bit from that.
Yeah, no, that's wild. I feel like I do think the ending was very like grounded in reality, and maybe
because like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna get a divorce? Or you're gonna be with this that is like a valid option, but like, let's think about it first. They were very kind of like in the moment, and listen,
and it was like a summer thing, you know, those
it was a summer
flings.
Fling,
it's like,
but listen, I actually, not to argue with you at all, but I actually kind of feel the opposite. I like the fact that it was open-ended because it does give us, the audience, the opportunity to kind of fill in the way that we want the story to go a little bit, be a little selfish.
That is true.
Like, maybe they do end up together. Maybe they just take a moment to kind of chill out instead of running away together. Like, hey, let's think it out like logically and do it properly.
Yeah.
Or maybe that doesn't happen.
That's fair. I think it's like with the narration, we got so much.
Yeah, you do get a lot of that.
I don't know. So maybe, I don't know. I would have liked to have some.
No, I feel you, though. I get you.
Yeah.
Open-ended endings are not for everybody.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I mean, I like them when I like them.
Yeah. No, sometimes they're better than others. Sometimes they are very dissatisfying. There's another movie with Kate Winslet, one of my favorite movies ever, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Incredibly open-ended ending. And it's like actually painful how open-ended it is.
Damn, I've never seen that either.
That's going to go on the list. Maybe next month that's going to be the movie that I pick. I think that's a good one. Brief rundown. That's a movie about two people who have a very toxic relationship, and they both sign up for this service in this fantasy story where they can wipe a specific memory out of their minds. So she wipes the memory of the guy she was dating out. And then he finds out she did that, and heartbroken, he does the same. But the movie is then played in the process of that happening. He's in his own mind as it's being eaten away. And he's trying to fight to remember her.
Yeah.
And at the end, well, I won't say anything beyond that, but that's basically the movie. Great movie. Fantastic movie. So we'll get you to watch that. But yeah, I love this movie so much, Little Children. It's great. It's even funny too at points, right? Like it's pretty somber, but
when they first kissed and all the three other women were immediately calling their children, I was laughing so hard. I actually rewinded around it and watched it again. It was so funny.
Yeah, the women were really funny. Larry definitely is a little bit of a comedic character. I like at the end there where he was just like sitting disappointed that he didn't meet him at the bar. He was like, fucking Brad. I don't even fucking like Brad. No one likes Brad. He's a loser. So that was pretty funny. But I love this film. Everybody go run out and watch this if you haven't seen it. It's
definitely give it a watch if you haven't seen this one.
Definitely amazing. I can't wait to catch up with Dusty.
Even if you don't like dramas, if it's not, I feel like I didn't have many problems watching this.
Drama is such a broad,
it's underrated
category
for sure.
It's like drama could encompass anything, right? Like this isn't a straight drama where it's like sad and depressing. It just kind of makes you sort of think a little bit. This movie definitely activates the brain and like kind of makes you be like, how do I feel about this? And that's why I love the narration so much, because it challenges you, because you're getting a different different aspect of what you're seeing than normal. Right. So very cool. But yeah, there you have it, folks. There's the Make Marvin Watch for June. Little Children. He loved it. We're on a good streak. You've liked everything we've made you watch, I think, so far.
Yeah.
I know you've liked everything I've made you watch. I can't speak on Dusty's. The Dusty stuff is kind of questionable. but no. So yeah, glad you liked it, Marvin. Anybody who hasn't seen this, if you're listening or watching, go check this movie out. It's fucking phenomenal. If you have seen it, leave us a comment down below. Let us know what you thought about this movie. Maybe you guys
tell us how we were wrong
differently. Well, I don't know if this is the movie where there is a right or wrong, to be honest. Like, I think it's very subjective on how you feel about it and the characters, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're a person who's been cheated on, you're gonna fucking hate both of them and not want them to come out of this in any positive way, right?
Yeah.
So, very perspective-based movie. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think about it. So let us know. Again, at Harsh Lang Pod on Twitter, available everywhere you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube.
Yes, sir.
If you've enjoyed,
new website coming soon.
Yeah, new website's done. We got to get that up and running.
Great.
It does look good, if I do say so myself. I made it, everybody. So, so do all that stuff. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't already and you enjoyed. But otherwise, we will catch you next week. Thank you for listening and watching.
See ya.